Twitter sent out. Get the bot in here and get our Discord taken care of. All right. Hello, everyone. This is Chris Ingerson, and it is May 30th, and this is the May 30th Text Quest Devstream. So today we are going to be working on combat stuff. I say stuff because it's a healthy dose of pretty much everything. Um, we're mostly going to be focusing on animations, but to start we are going to be doing a little bit of editor scripting, just to kind of make things look a little bit nicer. One of the things that I've been doing recently, I've been on a kick for updating my UI, so it's a little bit easier to immediately recognize things, and also it's much more pleasing to look at, as opposed to Unity's default way of drawing everything, which is just kind of these open foldouts. What I would like to do is I would like to start stylizing some of this just to make it a little bit easier when one ends and one begins. So you can see here, because of these bounding boxes, it's very obvious what each element is, where it begins, where it ends. So we're going to do a little bit of editor scripting just to clean this up a smidge, and then we'll pretty much move on to pure animation work for the next like 2 hours. So to get started, let's go ahead. Move a couple of things over. So this is the combat phase drawer, which is a property drawer for combat phase, which is what these foldouts are. Now, I don't think I need anything for stance behaviors, but I do need to handle this label. Instead of saying element 0, I would like it to show the health range, so it would be parentheses 5-3 parentheses. So we're going to go ahead, and before I do anything else, I am going to go over to combat phase, go to definition. We have combat stances. So what is this? It is just a timeline. That is... Okay. I guess we're not really doing much with stances right now. That's not really a concept for the troll. So we'll ignore that for the most part. We're just going to focus on getting the phase label set up. So all we have to do for that is, I'm going to go ahead and grab this. Get rid of that for now. I'm going to come over to here, and I'm going to say serialized property. Prop is equal to that. And I guess we'll call that health range. Okay, so we're going to want to say health range here. Let that be its own thing. And then we're going to go ahead and say for our label, we want to set the text. We want to say, actually we want to do a couple of things. We're going to say set label, ref label. This is a built-in function that I have for SOS property drawers that grabs the tooltip attribute that Unity has built in, and will apply that to this label. For some reason, if you're ever working with custom editors, the standard GUI content label that's passed here is just correct for the label. It's not correct for the tooltip. The tooltip is always empty when it comes in here. I have no idea why. Apparently it's an oversight or a bug in Unity's system, and they've known about it for years, and they've just not fixed it, which is kind of weird to me, but hey, it is what it is. So this set label function basically lets me work around that and actually grab the tooltip attributes and then set the label tooltip as appropriately. So I like to kind of just use that whenever I use a custom editor or custom property drawer in this case. And then after that, we actually want to set the text, because the text for the most part is pretty much just going to be that element 0, element 1, which isn't particularly useful. So what I would like to do is I'd like to say label.text is equal to, and this is where it gets fun, string.format. So we're going to say parentheses 0-1, and we're going to say health range dot vector to int value. I believe that's a vector 2. Yep. Okay. Vector 2 int value dot x followed by health range dot vector 2 int value dot y. Pretty straightforward. And then if we let that compile, everything should more or less look the same, except now our labels will say parentheses 5-3, parentheses 2-0 for this Pretty straightforward. Okay. Unfortunately, it does take an eternity for these to compile. I probably should actually throw the combat scripts in their own assembly definition. That might be a better way to handle things. All right. So that's pretty much all I wanted to do there. So we can pretty easily see that if we have 5 to 3 health, it's going to be in this section. If it's 2 to 0 health, it's going to be in this section. Then we can toggle those open. Everything's all nice and organized. So I like that. All right. So with that, we could probably just kind of move into our animation state. So where we are currently, we're working on phase 2. There are 3 phases to the Trolls combat. There's phase 1, which is what happens when he's at full health. There's phase 2, which is what happens when he drops to, I believe, 3 health, which is what you can see here. Although these are actually... So I'm currently working on phase 2, and I've gotten as far as the initial attack, and I'm working on the failure animations currently. So this is what it looks like to start. So this is immediately after you have selected your action to attack. So we're going to fade in. We're showing our attacks for this bit. That's pretty much all that is. A lot of this is broken up into fairly manageable segments of timelines. All right, so that's after we've completed our attack. We're going to go ahead and come into here. We've chosen our attack path. In this case, I believe we've chosen to go left. All right, so we come in and we do a little bit of a dive. The troll jumps up in the air and tries to crush us. And here's where the timeline ends. And to show you what that looks like in motion without me scrubbing manually, this is kind of what it does. And then, if you succeed, you go to a special timeline that I have not finished yet. That would be segment 03 left. But if you fail, then you go into this timeline, which has the troll stomping on you, and that is as far as the animation goes so far. However, the next step is basically when he stomps on you. So when you flatten out like this, the 3 letters ERO are going to come up because you've had your face stomped on. So the rest of your body's going to kind of like fling up. And once that happens, the troll is going to twist to grab you, and then, can't really show you from this camera angle, then fling you down the hall all the way over to here. At which point you will hit the wall. There will be a little bit of a delay as the troll resets. You'll fall into the water, and then the player will emerge up through the grating. Very similar to how the troll does that. So that's going to be a fair amount of animation for us to do, but it is what we do. That is the animation plan for this. In general, I try to keep these animations pretty snappy in the sense that they're not overly long, but they are not just like 1-second animations because no one would be able to tell what's going on there. So, all right, let's go ahead and around frame 30. Here's where we get into some fun stuff. So I need to check. Hold on. Set animation state. So we're going to the stomped animation state, which is right here. And the stomped animation. So it's been a while since I've shown this on the stream. I actually don't know if I've shown the new combat system on the stream. But the combat characters have a bunch of possible permutations that they can use. So what I do is we have a default animation, which is kind of our standard look in terms of how the characters are laid out. You know, individual letters are kind of aren't really parented to anything. They're parented to a root parent, and that's about it. With specific equip points for all the particular bits that they need to be at. There are special configurations that I have created that look functionally identical. So if I turn off default here, you'll see that stomped pretty much looks the same, but they are laid out differently. And in this case, You can see that H is the parent of E, which is the parent of R, which is the parent of O. And I do that because doing it this way allows me to do specific things with the animations in a little bit of an easier manner. If I try to animate all of the stuff that I'm going to animate with the standard configuration, it becomes very difficult to actually animate this stuff. Not impossible, mind you, but it just becomes tedious. So I'm gonna go ahead and say art. We're gonna be doing a lot of art today. I guess that's what I would count animation as, is art. So let's go ahead and we're gonna turn off stomped. We're gonna turn on default. We're gonna come. This is what's going to make it actually very difficult. I'm gonna have to keep stomped on, turn off default here. We're gonna go back to. Let's collapse some of this. We're gonna come back here to segment 02 left a failure. I'm going to scrub to line 30. Okay, that's where we are. So right about here is where things get kind of wonky. So up to this point, I have been handling the parent of the rotation. This is also super hard to show you because the timeline takes up so much space. But you can see that I've been animating the parent here, and I've been moving the hero child right here into position. So once we get to this point, I need to start animating these stomped values. And what I need to do there is I need to hit record. And let's see, we want to go to line 30, which is, I believe, where we are? No. Oh, they're up. Oh, actually, right. We want to go to 31. There we go. And we're going to go ahead and say, first things first, I'm going to set this rotation to be 1. And then I'm going to set it back to 0. So you'll notice that this is now keyframed. That's good. We're going to scrub all the way back to 0 on this, and I'm also going to go ahead and say 1 and then 0. That creates keyframes for this. Oh no. Oh, that's actually good. So we want this this curving that's happening here. That's intentional. What is happening is our default. I gotta move this over. So this is the camera view, and then as I scrub, you can see that we flatten out as the troll stomps on us, so I need to have that kind of rotation happening. All right, so once we get to frame 31, I'm going to, for the time being working on this, I'm going to just go ahead and have this be done off screen, the timeline, because there's a lot that I have to manipulate, and it's quite difficult for me to do that while trying to look at things over here, if it's taking up one of the screens that I need to use to look at things. So, so we're getting to 30. I'm going to say probably 30 frames later, I want E to be at its maximum rotation, which is going to be here. Or actually, let's go ahead and do one more, and then we'll just overshoot. So we'll do this. And then, this is where things get a little difficult. Position should probably be accounted for. Man, let me think. So one of the challenges in animating all of this is parenting, because everything in timeline is handled relative to the parent of the object that you're animating. So when I have stuff like this happen, it can get super awkward. Because keep in mind, even though the ERO characters are stomped up like this, the actual parent is here, which is at its root, which is obviously not great. And the actual object that gets moved most of the time is there, which is a little offset. But we need to change this somewhat. So we're actually going to probably end up cheating a fair amount, in the sense that we're probably going to animate... Oh no, that sucks. Ugh. So, of course we're in like a reverse situation. when the troll picks you up and flings you, it's gonna rotate and bend back. It's very hard to describe this. I really should have sketched it into Photoshop to show you all. I have some physical sketches, but those are no good on Twitch. So essentially, what's going to happen is try to get in a good position here. The troll's top letters T, R, and probably a bit of O are going to rotate and bend so that it can grab you with the top of its head, and then it's going to rotate back real quick and fling you down that hallway. That's what it's going to do. Now that's a pretty simple action, but we have to, one, animate that with just stiff characters. And two, the problem with that is that with the way that you would be thrown in that case, the O is where the action is going to be taking place, because that's where the troll's going to grab on. Basically think you got your face stomped on, and I'm going to assume you probably want to think anime physics for this. But face gets stomped on, the rest of your body kind of flings up a bit. Then the person you're fighting grabs your ankle and throws you across the arena. I say that as I hit my microphone. That's basically all we're doing. But because O is where you're being grabbed, it means that the rest of the body needs to follow O. But because O is parented to R, which is parented to E, which is parented to H, that's not how that would work. Which means that I actually need to switch between states if I want to do this right. So probably the best thing for me to do, and actually just out of curiosity, I would like to see what this looks like. So we're gonna, okay. So I'm going to go ahead and grab this, and I'm gonna, oh, don't do that to me. I hate when you do that. This is one of my least favorite things about working with timeline. Is that if you do the slightest mouse movement can screw you over. So we want to overshoot a bit, right about there. So now this is what it's going to look like. Okay, a bit mechanical, but that's fine for now. The main thing was that we have that overshoot from being stomped on. And things are going to look, for a while, they're going to feel a little slow and floaty. Like that obviously feels very slow and floaty. And that's going to be okay while we're doing the initial keyframing. Basically what the process is for this animation, we will keyframe the specific moments that we want, and then we'll kind of go back through and clean up the animations so that they feel more snappy and feel a little bit more realistic, or perhaps cartoonish would be a better way of phrasing that. So that everything will make logical sense. Doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be realistic, but it does mean it'll make sense. So we need to stomp. We have a little bit of overshoot because when you move, things don't come to a complete stop right away. They instead usually overshoot and then come back down. And likewise, if you ever drop something, you'll notice that you'll bounce up and kind of overshoot and come back down to a resting position. That's basically what we're doing there. And then this is where we need to, once we get to this point, we need to swap out for a completely reversed stomped. So I probably actually need to rename this to, instead of stomped, I'm going to call this stomping. How about stomped on? Well, yeah, I'll just leave it as stomped. Maybe I should change it to face stomped, though. Yeah, we'll call that face stomped. Face stomped. We're going to come back over to here. I need to change this from stomped. Really now. Oh ho ho. Really? Oh, that's right. Because it's on the this. Where are you? There we are. So I'm going to call this face stomped. Face stomped. We're going to go ahead and come back to here real quick. Face stomped. That's what we want. Good. And now I'm going to need to make basically the exact same thing, but slightly different. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to come through here. Oh, right. I gotta rename this real quick. So I need to change this property, basically. Oi. There should be a way to do this. There we go. So animations, for those who don't know, are all coded by, well, they're all basically giant dictionaries of string values. Oh, I'm sorry, face stomped. Boom. And as you can see, now it'll work. So if I were to come back over to here and start scrubbing, there we go. Cool. So right about here, this is where I need to be. We're going to keep that locked. I'm going to go ahead and duplicate that, or rather, I'm going to copy it, I guess. I'm going to paste that down. It's going to look hilarious. Oh, man, it got me. Smart. You're smarter than I gave you credit for. So we're going to come back over here to 60. What's your rotation? 60 degrees? All right. Cool. So we're going to call this stomp throw, I guess. Stomp throw. All right. And turn off that preview real quick. We're going to come back up here to our model. We're going to add another thing. This is going to be stomp throw. Stomped. Hand position is E. Head position is H. All right. From that, we can go ahead. We're going to be at 60. We're going to turn off face stomped. I'm going to move you to be next to that because this is for our troll combat. All right. And this is where things need to change. So I need... Oof. This is going to be tough. Turn off preview here. This is going to be one of the hardest things. Actually, it's not going to be that hard. Basically, what we're going to do is we're going to remove you. Okay. And then we're going to parent these in reverse order. Like that. So now, when we scrub through, you can see that even though we... Oh, yeah, it's going to look wrong for that. But sadly, I don't have it disabling and enabling things as we scrub. But this is what it looks like. So it's the exact same, as far as we can tell, as the face stomped. If I put them both on, you can't tell. They're overlapping each other perfectly. So what we need to do here now is we need to... So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to animate the stomp throw. Specifically, I'm going to animate the O as the troll grabs and flings the player. And we're going to just spiral from that. Because that way I should have a decently easy time actually handling the animation curves and keyframing on that. If I did it the other way, I would be grabbing at the child and having to animate the parent awkwardly along that. But this way I can do things a little bit more organically. So now we're going to do a couple of things. One, I'm going to take a drink real quick. All right. Let's see here. So I'm going to need to set combat animation state. We're going to call that stomped. What? Freaking timeline. I need to close timeline and reopen it. sometimes when you're working with timeline, it can get into a buggy state. And I'm hoping that they fixed some of that in the later versions of Unity, but I'm kind of locked in 2017 right now, so it's unfortunate, but I have to deal with the somewhat unstable timeline. Anywho, so we're gonna go ahead and animate our troll. We have that. So at line, right. So just to give us an easier time, we're gonna go ahead and turn on face stomped. Come back down here to left a failure. So we're gonna see everything rotate. See that animate. All right. So I'm gonna go ahead and say set animation state. Stomped. Okay. Set animation state stomped. We're going to go ahead and duplicate this. Duplicate. I'm going to change this to say instead of stomped, it's going to be called drone. Well, so your name's Don John. Thank you for the follow. I really wanted to call you Don Juan, and I'm assuming that it's meant to be a joke on that, kind of. But either way, welcome to the stream, and thanks for the follow. How are you doing today? As I seamlessly transition back into talking about animations. So, we're going to set our combat animation clip here at 60. We're going to change this from face stomped to stomp throw. Excuse me. And then we're going to go ahead and start animating. So right about here. All right. So at frame 30, we're going to go ahead and do some animation on the troll real quick. Let's see. So we need to come up here to troll parent, troll, model. So this is not exactly ideal because our troll is in a, well, they're freeform. So I could animate this individually, like I was talking about before. I would prefer to animate this with T parented to R, which is parented to O, so that I can kind of more easily handle the flinging motion. If I do it freeform by hand, it's not going to be too bad. It's just going to be a lot of keyframing, which is probably okay for this, actually, so it should be fine. All right. So we're going to go ahead and start animating some of this. And that means we're going to need to animate rotation and positioning on TRO, L, and probably L on the bottom, although not really so much there. I might... How do I want to do this? I would like to do it rotation based, because then it kind of looks more painful when you're being thrown. Plus, that lets me do some fun spiraling, and I need to throw him on the opposite side of the troll anyway. I don't want to throw. I was debating if I should have the troll bend backwards and fling you over the top, but I think it'll be funnier if he bends to the right and then just like throws you all the way down there. Oh man, and then I just also thought it would be awesome if you had particle effects if you when you bounced off the wall that says like ouch. Ooh. Yes, I do want to do that. Okay, so let's go ahead and we're going to start animating our TROLL. First things we need to do is we just got to nudge everything so that it's in the correct spot. It's going to be in that spot by default here, so we're going to go ahead and just nudge everything real quick. So we're going to say position of 0.1 and 0 and rotation of 1 and 0. We're just going to do this for everything real quick. So rotation of 1, 0, 1, and 0. This is going to make my timeline a bit messy. All right. So now that is everything that we need for those particular values. They have been initialized. We want them to stay where they are until we get to about 30. So then we have to do all that again. We need to reset our keyframes. Then we're going to go ahead and do that for all of them. I really wish I knew of a good way of doing this without having to adjust a value. It would be nice to just be able to like hit the K key on things that I have selected, which I don't think is a thing. I remember trying at some point and it never worked. It makes me very sad. So what I'm basically doing with all this entering one and then deleting it is I'm establishing keyframes. That way we don't have accidental animations happen, or accidental curve evaluations, so tweening long animations happening. Okay, so right about here is where we want that to go, and then we immediately want to start rotating and grabbing because he has to basically grab you by the time you get to frame 60. So he has half a second to turn around and grab you. And we'll probably end up dragging that out a bit so that it's like, instead of half a second, it's 3/4 of a second. But we can easily move keyframes later, so I'm more concerned about getting the actual keyframes correct. All right, so by 60, we basically want, and we have the benefit of him being off screen, so we don't actually have to bend him in a realistic manner. So we're going to go ahead and make sure that that's locked, keep you up. We're going to go ahead and say, so L, we probably want to have rotated to about there. O, we're going to go ahead and have it rotated to about there. And then R and T will straight up be cheating, and we'll have them be rotated to like there. Oof, we're already having some difficulties actually. So we need to rotate this. We don't want you to be global. We need this to be set. So a little bit of a... Oh, no, hold on. Before we do that, let's go ahead and rotate you a little bit more to about right there. I rotate you just about there. Move the R. We are going to rotate that to about there. And this is going to be quite challenging because I need to basically put you there. Except, of course, I moved it, and if I do Control Z, it's gonna frick with everything. So we'll try to kind of eyeball this as best we can. Let's go ahead and do that. And the T is gonna have all of the weirdness. It's basically gonna be like this, and we're gonna be dragging it all around here. And let's go ahead and put you here. Eyeballing this. This is going to be monstrous to look at in the editor, but it should look correct in the freaking... Great. Now I have scale in there by accident. So I'm going to have to get rid of that. And we need one more turn, I think, right about there. So we have this monster, this Frankenstein's monster that we have created, that I'm going to kind of put down to here. So that's what that looks like. And this is what it's going to look like. Oh my goodness. Oh? Time out. Did I not animate the T? Oh, I totally did. Oh, the Z positioning. Right. So I'm going to assume that needs to be 0. Are you still wrong on the T? What the frig happened here? Okay, time out, time out. Just stop. So 0 and 2.2. And for some reason, it's not at that. Wow. 0 and again, 2.2. Wow, really? Something's fighting me on this 2.2. Oh, that's why. I didn't actually set it to record. So 2.2 on you. 2.2 and 0 on you. Select our R value. I'm pretty sure that needs to be zeroed out. Yeah, set you to be 0. By 30, we want you to be 0 still. And then we want you to rotate into this monster form. So we have our rotation and our bend, and then we basically are going to do that kind of in reverse. Oh man, I gotta redo that T animation. It needs to rotate so that it's facing the other way. Okay, hold on. Sorry. This is much harder to do. There we go. I'm not looking at it directly. Okay, so the reason that I did that is because, of course you do. Because I love pain and suffering. Give me my T here. So I have to do some keyframe smoothing here. Because, I hate it when it does this, it went the wrong way. So as you can see, it's like bending back in on itself. And that is not what we want it to do. That means that one of these values is animating incorrectly, and it becomes incredibly difficult because quaternions suck. So I would say, let's see here. My Y value is going the wrong way. I need to flip what my Y value is doing. So we're going to go to here. You are at 89. We're going to edit this and say negative. So it'll look exactly the same for the most part. Okay, there we go. So, nope. Okay, cool. Which means that we're going to do this instead. I hate doing this, but we're going to have to do it. We're deleting those keyframes and we're rekeying them. This is one of the downsides to working in timeline. If you don't keyframe it the exact right way when you want it to, it will look wrong. I know that sounds obvious, but what I mean by that is it will be entirely wrong. So we want to be about there, I'd say, and then right about there. Of course it did. So you can see it's freaking out here. And fortunately, that's fine for us because it's off screen, so I don't actually care. It's just annoying that it's not following its parent. And this is where parenting them would probably solve this problem because I would be able to do it in incremental turns as opposed to manual keyframing it. So I might. Okay, let's go ahead and actually stop this real quick. I'm going to come up here to our model, combat animation state manager. I am going to go ahead and so I'm going to break this into a separate class. We're going to create C# script. I'm going to call this, we'll call it hero. Hero combat animation state manager. So we're going to open that up. We're going to open up Combat Animation State Manager and move some of its functionality over into Hero Combat State Animation Manager. And then we're going to kind of streamline Combat State Animation Manager so that other things can use it. Basically, the only thing that we don't need, well, so the root one just needs states. The hero one really only needs this stuff. So we're going to say virtual void change state. We're going to, let's see here. Root hand position only used for inspector purposes. Oh, right, that's because I'm lazy. So, also, that's not true anymore. The hand position stuff, that gets a little tricky because that is necessary for the player, but also I need ID and root for everything. So, what do we want to do about that? Well, I suppose the obvious or the easy thing to do is just to have a bool there, I guess. So let's set this to null, set you to null, set you to null, and then we're just going to go ahead and say, well, yeah, right. We're going to do some custom editor scripting after we do this. So let's go ahead and hit save, and then we're going to go ahead and I'm going to move this stuff down. Oh man, you're going to really mess with me here. But we're going to go ahead and get rid of these. We're going to move this over to here. This is going to be part of TextQuest.combat. It's going to derive from this. We're going to copy this. We're going to say override. Make these protected. You. Okay, so pretty straightforward there. Which I suppose means that I could just call base.changeState index for this. Pretty straightforward there. I was stupid when I did that, but it's okay. Was it okay, though? Was it okay? It wasn't really. Man. And they're serialized at the same time, because of course they are. So, yeah, no luck there. Let me go ahead and say null, equal to null, null. Alright, that should take care of pretty much everything that I need there. And let's go ahead and let that compile. We're going to come down to here. Put hero. Of course, you're not going to work until you compile because you just want me to lose all of my stuff. Okay. Fortunately, all of this should retain its positioning. I'm just going to lose those 3 references, which I actually still have. So give that a second to compile, and then we'll be right back on track. Should it ever choose to actually compile. Because it's very important that you don't rush these things. Alright, so we're going to go ahead and now I'm going to add, of course, I'll put you here. We're going to go into our states. We have 4 so far. Let's open up all of these. We're going to say default troll dash roll face stomped and then stomp throw. Stomp throw. Alright, so let's go ahead and kind of just cycle through all of these. Head, that's not head equip, point, right equip point, left equip point. Let's just get those out of the way. Alright, so we have default. Boom. Work with me here. E and O and H for that. Then we have our control roll, which again should be E and H. It's always going to be E and H, I think, for hand position and head position. Then we have face stomped, stomp throw, head position, hand position, head position, and hand position. All right, so that's all of that. We can now remove this. Everything should be good there. That does mean real quick we have to go through before I forget. I need to grab a bunch of these things. So we need to set this. Face stomped is what we want. Fortunately, that will all retain its value. Okay. So we need to go to segment 1, I believe. Check this. Quickly spool through these. Segment 2. I think I need left A failure. That's. Oh wait, no, that's segment 2. We still want. It's phase 2. No wonder. Segment 1. Okay, that looks good. Segment 1 failure. We want post damage, deal damage, rotate troll. Then segment 2. Here we are. That's what I was looking at. Set combat animation state, which needs to just be my model here, which will be troll roll, I believe. Actually, default was probably correct there. Hold on, sorry, renaming some things. So let's set that to default. Yeah, here's where things can get a little funky. There we are. There we go. That is better. Okay, we can hit 0 or save on that real quick. So now we're back to where we need to be. And now I can do basically the same thing to my troll, which should help me smooth things over a little bit. So I am going to, oh boy, this is going to really require some work. So I need to set up the troll to have a similar setup for this, but that has the unfortunate implication of it's going to break quite a few of my my animations. Specifically, if we come down here to animation, turn you off, you can see that it's doing direct anchored position, which means that I'm going to have to update a lot of this stuff. It should still work, it just means that I'm going to have to do that. Alright, so let's go ahead and get started. So we're going to go ahead and create a new game object here. I'm going to call it default. This is where all of these labels will live. Yes, I know that will break it. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and change this. We're going to call this throw stomped hero. Okay. And this is going to be different in the sense that everything's going to be parented to one another. So T will be parented to R, which is parented to O, which is actually, before I do any of that, we need to change. Okay, never mind, they're fine. So T is parented to R, which is parented to O, which is parented to L1, which is parented to L2. The reason that we're doing it that way is because this will allow me to easily rotate, because we are rotating. We are going to be moving along the troll's feet, if that makes sense as a phrase. Because basically, when you move around, if you're standing, your base is kind of where your body moves from, because that's where obviously you're pushing off from the ground. Because of that, we want all of our animations to kind of be put along that, well, made with that principle in mind. So we are going to be animating from the feet up. So that way, my T, when it rotates, it will also rotate with the O, or the R, which will rotate with the O and the L. That's going to be what we use for this. So with that structure in place, now I can. We got to fix this. So we got to add default to everything. Let's go ahead and grab this. Fortunately, I should be able to just copy paste. Okay. Now let's go ahead and go to get angry, because we have to do the same thing for all of that. I really wish I had a tool for this to just kind of like flood fill everything. That would be nice. But it's okay. At least there is a way to manually fix this in animations. It would suck if I had to just bite the bullet and reanimate all of these. Okay. So let's get angry, and then attack is the same thing. Fortunately, we don't have a lot of animations so far for the troll. And that's partially because a lot of this is animated through timeline, which is probably not great. Because we're going to have to change a bunch of this. Oops. Alright, so that's all of those. Let's go ahead and real quick, we need to come over here to segment 1. We're going to go to segment 1 failure. We need to edit an animation window. So we gotta fix some of this real quick. Kind of trying to eyeball where all of these would be. Failure. Got target clip, that's all correct. Okay. Come back here to segment 02, troll parent. Cool, so I don't really have to do anything with this, I don't think. Nope, looking good. Cool, so that's segment 1 is fine, or phase 1 is fine. Phase 2 should be fine. We're not really animating anything on the troll specifically. We are animating its individual parts. So we're going to start doing animation on the left again. So we're going to go ahead and say, well, a couple of things. One, put this, group these things a little bit better. I keep forgetting that you can't see any of this. This is what I'm currently doing. I'm just kind of restructuring things. So this is pretty good so far. So we basically want to redo all of these values, which sucks a lot. But we can animate in a little bit more of a realistic way now. So let's go ahead. Move this back over to here. All right, so those are our orders that we're going to set. So what this clip is doing is setting the draw order of the labels. That way the troll looks like he's drawing above the hero no matter what. When when they're on the same layer, Z fighting can, well, it's not really even Z fighting, it's just order decision can be a little skewed sometimes, because I think it's basically calculated by which object you can see more of. And even though L is above the H, you could technically see more of the H from this angle, so it draws on top of the L. It's a little weird. So it's better to just kind of manually fudge the sorting sometimes to make sure that certain things look correct. That's basically what I do for the wizard's beard. The wizard's beard, if he is facing towards you, is always at a higher priority than his body is, and vice versa if he's facing away from you. Anyway, so one of the things that we need to do here is we need to add a set combat animation state for the troll. So we're going to go ahead and say I'm going to add a CPL text quest combat playable track, which I think is where this goes into. So this is, yeah, set combat animation state. So we're going to say set animation state throw stomped hero. Okay. We're going to go ahead and grab this. We want that to happen, and I'm going to say around frame 30. So let's come up to here to our troll model, which I do not have set up yet, of course. So we need to go to, all right, here we are, Combat Animation State Manager. We're going to have two. We're going to have default and throw stomped hero. So here's our root there. There's our root there. And we don't need hand or head positions for this. So we're going to do a little bit of a quick and dirty custom inspector for this. So let's go ahead. I need to go down here too. Let's just collapse some of this stuff because we don't need it. All right. So that is under scripts characters. So we have scripts, create folder, characters. The actual class is Combat Animation State Manager. So we're going to say create C# script Combat Animation State Manager editor. Let's open that up real quick. Alright, so this is going to be part of TextQuest.combat. We're going to say using Unity Editor, and I don't think we need sleepyowl.common editor. Yeah, we do. Using sleepyowl.common editor. I always need that. This is going to be a custom editor, type of combat animation state manager. Editor, oops, editor. Override, we're going to have to override on Spectre GUI, definitely. I'm going to say protected virtual void on enable. Okay, we're going to come up to here, we're going to say protected serialized property. Guess it's just states. Is that what I called it? Yep. So m states is equal to null. Say m states is equal to serialized object dot find property states. Okay, we're gonna get rid of this based on Spectre GUI, and we're gonna say custom editor utility dot script fields, serialized object, then serialized object dot update, serialized object dot apply modified properties. Man, this is where it gets super fun. Manually having to draw this, I'm not a fan. So we want to say Um, woof. Man, I hate. I could do this with a custom property drawer a little bit easier, but it would be much harder for me to get rid of the fields that are there. So I have to do it through this. Okay. So what we want to do is we want to say, um, we can't just do it that way. Of course not. So I need to say m states dot is expanded is equal to editor GUI layout dot foldout m states dot is expanded followed by m states dot get label, and I think that's all I really need for that. Then we're going to say if m states dot is expanded, we're going to say first up editor GUI dot indent level plus plus. We're going to go ahead and copy that and paste that back down here, minus minus, and then we're going to say editor GUI. Actually, hold on. Custom editor utility. Nope. Well, no, yeah, okay, not there. I think it's mstates.array. Oh man. All right. So I need to do. I believe the array serialized property is called size. I could be wrong though. Actually, I might just cheat here real quick. Do a little bit of decompiling of Unity's DLLs on the fly. So let's see here. Did you just not open, or are you taking a while? Ah, you are just taking a while. I think. It shouldn't take this long. ILSpy. Let's just open file location then. Weird. Whatever. Of course none of you are still here. Fine. You can be that way. So I need to go to downloads. I believe I want to go to this program files. Unity hub editor. We are in 2014.9. Might as well do that. Editor. I think we want. It would be very nice. Hub editor data managed. Okay, nice. So editor data managed. Unity editor DLL. Somewhere around here, I'm guessing. Unity editor DLL. Okay, and we need to go to Unity editor. Serialized property. Serialized property. We want array. Let's see, assuming that we get lucky. I basically just need to know it's array. Of course, it's a freaking turn array size, which is the same thing, so that's actually not going to help me. Crud. Oh, and all of these now opened up, of course. So I need to say mstates dot. I don't want to say array size. I really don't want to do that. Let me just look this up real quick. So we're going to say Unity serialized property array property, I guess. Array size property. I just want to know. I don't want that. I want the actual array size property. Because I can manually set it with an int, but I prefer to do it through serialized properties. So let's see, mspeed. Let's see. Of course, that's not going to get me what I want. Let's see. I guess we'll say get array size property. Array field type serialized property. Serialized property. That can't happen. I don't even think. Well, I guess you can get the field type of the properties field type. Let's see here. It's been a while since I've had to manually retrieve this, so I don't think it's .length. I'm pretty sure it's not. Let's see. It's basically looking for, let's see, array length 0. There it is. So it is array.size. Okay. Right. So it gets kind of weird when you're messing with arrays in custom inspectors, because it's not as simple as saying like serialized property dot array size or dot size. I believe you actually do need this dot array dot size. That's the actual thing that you need. It's super weird, but I believe that's what it is. So in that case, we want to say editor GUI layout dot property field, and then we're going to say mstates dot find property relative, and then we say dot array dot size. So we can leave that. And I am going to let that compile real quick so that we can double check that to make sure that it is working. So if we look at our troll model, we should see this update, and we should see states and size. So let that go real quick. Oh man, doing weird custom editor stuff like that always throws me for a loop, because I do it like maybe once in a blue moon, and therefore I forget how to access specific things. So yeah, you're going to complain for a bit there. So states. Oh, well, look at that. Null reference exception probably means I'm going to assume that that is at where I'm trying to access that serialized property. Yep. Crud. So it wasn't that. Also, hello, Garrett. The madness goes well, I suppose. I just got to remember how to access my array size property on serialized properties, and not in a manner that just uses serialized property.array size, because I actually want to manipulate the serialized property itself. And I thought it was array size, but maybe not. Well, not maybe. Apparently, it's not. Mstates dot. Yes, we know you have children. Do I really not have get children? Nope, I don't. Fields. Nope. Yarg. Give me a second here. Name dot array size. So is that not correct? Dot array dot size. Dot array dot size. Oh. Well. Interesting. Let me think. Is it perhaps array dot size? That might actually be what I want. Let's try that. But yeah, at work we actually solved this problem by me just creating a function that calls this, but because of that I've forgotten what the actual thing is. I'm pretty sure that it is array.size though. Yeah, there we go. Okay. Oh, and you're not going to toggle, but cool. So that's working now. It's drawing the size for the array. We're going to go ahead and I'm going to change this to, because I forgot to say comma true. That way we can click anywhere on the label to have it toggle open and shut. I have no idea why this is even an option, honestly. I have never had a single user experience where clicking directly on the area or the arrow was preferable to just clicking on the label. No idea. Anyway, so now that we have our array size, now we can actually start looping through and drawing everything. So for that, we're going to go ahead and say for int I equals 0, I is less than mstates dot array size I plus plus. Okay, and then we're going to have a custom function down here, protected virtual void draw state, and then we're going to say serialized property state, I guess is what I'll just call that. Okay, and for that we want to just say editor GUI layout dot property field, property field, and we're going to say state dot find property relative, and that needs to be ID and root. Those are the two that I need. ID and root. Okay, so we're just going to go ahead and say draw state, and then m underscore states dot get array element at index I. Pretty straightforward. And to make this look a little bit better, I'm just going to go ahead and say, actually, I need to change that up to make it a little bit easier to use. We're going to say editor GUI layout dot begin vertical, and we're going to say editor styles dot help box, and then editor GUI layout dot end vertical. This way we have individual wrappings for all of our elements here. Let's see. I have this idea to do scriptable objects with default values, kind of like a prefab, where a value has a base default value and can be optionally overwritten, like all dragons as the defaults and red dragons as a subtype. Would be easy with JSON, I guess not as editor friendly. So you can actually assign default, well, I guess what, so when you say where a value has a base default value, do you mean like you would have basically a main scriptable object and then you would have another scriptable object that's referencing that and overrides specific things? I'm assuming that's what you mean, but I don't actually know. Yeah, okay. That is totally doable. I actually created a system kind of like that for one of the tools we use at work. The way I had to do that was kind of weird though. So it it involved doing some weird JSON serialization, and basically storing that JSON serialization in a string that could then be retrieved at runtime and booted up, and that would load in all of those overrides while keeping the standard fields. So I don't remember exactly how I did it. I just remember I remember using the JSON utility that Unity has built in to export a serialized JSON blob that, well, not a serialized, but a JSON blob that contains all of the serialized information that you need, and then I would just load that in on initialize, and it would find all the references as appropriate. So we're going to go ahead and let this compile, and that should actually draw everything in the way that oh wait, no, I knew I would forget. So we're going to go ahead and say that's fine. We're just going to go ahead and say editor GUI. Give me a second here. So we're going to say state.isExpanded is equal to editor GUI dot fold out, and I guess I can say editor fold out state dot is expanded followed by the label, which is going to basically just be this dot string value, which I guess means that I could just straight up say state dot get label, and I think we'd be fine. It'd be basically the exact same thing. And then we're just going to say if state dot is expanded. We're going to draw these two. All right. So let's go ahead and let that compile real quick. Yeah, so this is what it would look like if I just did it as is. Everything will be open all the time. This way will actually let me see everything in a pretty decent looking manner. Although hilarious, you can see that it's not indented on this, which is highly vexing to me. And again, I forgot to do that. That is, it's okay, I guess, because the default and the actual label actually looks fine underneath it. So we'll keep it fine. But I am going to go ahead. Well, before we do anything else, let's go ahead and say create C#. We're going to call this Hero Combat Animation State Manager Editor. Editor. There we go. But yeah, you can use the JSON utility to basically export a blob of JSON that you can then reapply to your scriptable object. What's the situation that you're planning on using this in exactly? So you say you want to override specific fields. What's the larger structure that you're going for, I guess? If you can describe that system to me, it would probably be easier for me to give specific recommendations. So I'm going to go ahead and open this up. I'm going to come back to here real quick, and I'm going to say comma true. I'm going to just, while I'm in here, copy this, paste this in here. TextQuest.combat using Unity editor, using sleepyowl.textquest.combat, using sleepyowl.common editor. This is going to derive from combat's animation state manager editor. I'm going to say custom editor, type of hero combat animation state manager. We're going to set this to be override. And then we're going to go ahead and say, I'm going to copy this 2 times. Head position and hand position. Okay. Pretty straightforward there. And then we need to say override on enable. Override on inspector GUI. So we want to change this up a little bit. And so I'm going to go ahead and move this chunk of code to a protected void draw states. We're just going to call draw states. Okay, we're going to come down over here. We're going to do pretty much the exact same thing. I guess I could actually copy all of this for now. Bam. Then we're going to need 3 particular things. We're going to peek this real quick. We're going to grab these 3. Make these all serialized properties. I'm just going to say left hand equip is equal to serialized object, find property, blah, blah, blah. Just copy that, paste it in. Copy, paste. Quick so we have good standards. It would be for things like a database of items, mobs, spells, and all those sorts of things. I create everything in code right now, so I can use defaults, but I have to compile every time I change anything. Slow. Yeah. Um, so, um, is this essentially? Let's see. So this is essentially a database of stats. Is that correct? Um, because if that's the case, then I can think of a couple of ways you can do this actually. So we're going to come up to here. We're going to say editor GUI. Ooh, editor GUI. Oh. Okay, one more time. Editor GUI layout. There we go. Property field. And left hand equip. We're just going to copy this. Boom, boom. That. Nice. All right, so that's all pretty much what I need to do. Let's go ahead and let that compile. Everything should look nice. So now our troll. Ooh. Oh, right. That's the hero. So the hero, this should shift pretty dramatically. These should move up to the top, and these should move down, and then they should be correctly positioned and all that. There's tons of ways of doing it. Just thinking about trying a Unity-friendly way. Yeah. So I would recommend for that structure. Well, so do you want to have? I'm assuming that you're going to have different stat classes for items, mobs, spells. Like they'll all have their own individual data classes, correct? You want to just have one like generic data class for all that. Hooray! So you can see that we have states. Oh, that's a little unfortunate. It's not going to show that as bold, but well, we'll deal with it. Um, so you can see that we now have our equip points over here. If we go to our troll, it still looks correct. We have our states, and we don't have to worry about our head and hand equip points because we don't care about those. And we can, of course, collapse these if we so choose. If we go up to the hero, we have all of these set up. Same thing though. We can individually toggle these open. They do have our fields that we need for everything, so that's cool. And now everything's all nice and contained in these help box drop down or help box outlines, which helps group everything up. So cool. Nice custom inspectors. Let's go ahead and what were we doing? We were animating a troll. So now that this is here, let's go down here to troll model. We're going to go back to segment 2, left failure. Set combat animation state. We want this to be throw stomped hero. And once we have that, we can start animating it. So let's come back down here to left a failure. Here's where things get a little iffy. I need to, again, I need to animate all of my individual values first. So we're going to go ahead and lock this, start recording. All right, and then we're going to say, so we need to move this around first. So we're going to say that, 0 U out, position of Z, we're also going to need to animate. I have no idea why you are individually animated. That was curious. Our rotation, same thing. And that's all we really care about for that. So let's go ahead and do that again for everything. I don't know why it's only doing it for the Y value or the X value. Surely it is not doing it for the X value alone. Hold on. Hmm, let's see. So that's L1. So we want to go to L1. Wow, it really is animating it individually. Huh. All right. Well, we don't want that. So now I have to animate it on all of those. Let's see. Set that back. Set that back. Set that back. Set that back. Boom. 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 And boom. Same thing. Same thing. And same thing. All right. So now those are all initialized in their correct position. Let's see. Like a base class of property, like a base class of properties for all dragons. Let's say with default properties like breathes fire, and then a special case for the black dragon that breathes acid. Mainly, I want to be able to make persistent changes to properties at runtime, and the editor, like scriptable objects, can, but with defaults from a base class. Right. So the way that I would handle that, and this is kind of the way that this is one of the ways that I handled this. It's a little cumbersome, but it works. It just takes it's a little cumbersome to set up, but once everything's set up, it works pretty well. Is essentially you would have you have your base class. So let's say you have your base class for dragons, and that's like like health, um, breath type, armor, magic resistance, whatever. Let's say that your base dragon values for that is like 100 health, breathes fire, has an armor rating of 50, and a magic resistance of 50. Um, and then what you would do is you would have your base class called like Dragon Stats or whatever, and then you would have another class called Dragon Override Stats, and that class inherits from Dragon Stats, and then has a couple of extra things in it. It has one a reference to a way of referencing an original stats value, so an original dragon stat, and that can be either through scriptable object or through some sort of ID system. I would recommend an ID system because that makes it a little bit easier to work with, but you can do direct references through scriptable objects if you want. And in that override class, you would have basically the same. You would duplicate the fields that you had in the original and just append override to them, and then you would add bools equivalent to the number of fields that you have, and you would say like override armor, override health, override breath, and then if you want to change that, you would just click on that toggle in the inspector, and then it would enable a control to let you set that value, and then you would use accessors, getters, to determine if you should use the override value or the original value, basically on all of those data classes. So, like I said, it's a little cumbersome to set up initially because anytime you add a new thing, you have to add a field to all of that. But doing it that way basically makes it so that you can have everything pointing to base data classes and have specific fields that you override, should you so choose to. That's one of the ways that I handled it for a tool that we made at work. And it seems to work pretty well in the sense that it lets us have a single like base set of data, and then we can override the specific portions that we want. Just do straight up C# inheritance with a scriptable object. Yeah, that might work. I'll have to change the child class for each overridden value. So what I was suggesting actually is that you would use one scriptable object as a repository for all of that data, and then you would have just regular. Well, it could be either serialized classes or you could use individual scriptable objects for them. Um, it's really up to how you want to handle it. if you have individual scriptable objects for every character in the game or everything in the game, it can be a bit unwieldy. But it ultimately comes down to how you want to approach it. I would recommend using an ID system instead and having each field or each like data set associated with a unique ID. That way you can reference that ID in the inspector for things. You can just say like I want this ID or I want the stats for this ID instead of having to have a direct reference to that scriptable object that you'll have to navigate to each time. Um, I keep thinking of scriptable object as a data only when they do. Yeah, we're actually starting to experiment at work with scriptable object logic. So you would have functions and enumerators in scriptable objects that you then pass to objects to do specific functionality. Um, it's a little awkward, but once you start doing that, it's actually really cool. Just because it lets you swap out the brains of stuff pretty easily by just dragging in a new scriptable object. Anyway, so we're gonna go ahead and come over here to 30. Man, after talking all that time, I need a drink. All right. Same thing. We need to animate all of this again. I really wish I could just keyframe. As far as I know, there's no easy way to do that, unfortunately. Which sucks. Yep, I can't even like right click or do anything. That's so sad. All right. So we're gonna have to manually do this again. Okay. This going. That going. All right, last one. All right, nice. So we now have all of that set up. And now what we can do, we say we're setting our stomped animation state to throw hero. So now we need to animate our values for that. So we're going to go ahead and come back over to here. Are you not? Oh, nice. Our previous animations aren't working because they're the name change, of course. Um, yeah, my AI is all property driven now. Not that it's anything more than a prototype, but it seems to be the way to go. Nice. Um, yeah, as I spend more and more time messing with Unity's editor, I am increasingly drawn to trying to simplify my editors through the use of these drop downs. Um, so instead of having direct references to things, I will typically just have um, IDs that I reference. So in this case, this is for a clip called set combat animation state clip, which references this combat animation state manager, and it just directly pulls the states from it. So for example, this is what you see for the troll. You have two values, default and throw stomped hero, but if we go over to one of the hero ones, we have default troll roll, face stomped, stomp throw. These IDs are just generated at edit time whenever you open up that inspector by referencing these states. And I start doing stuff like that, which takes a little bit of setup, but in the long run, it makes your life so much easier. So I definitely recommend trying to simplify workflow um, by using things like that, which is why I suggested using a scriptable object to contain all of your data and then having unique IDs that you then reference for each data set, because then that lets you retrieve those data sets fairly easily, and you can do a custom editor to drive what values are displayed and which ones are overridden and all that. So there's a lot of things that you can do there. And if you are comfortable with Unity's editor system, you can do all sorts of really crazy stuff. Like God, there's just it can be a real fun treat sometimes. Even though I complain about it fairly often, I do really like Unity editor scripting. Anyway, so now I'm going to animate all of this. So we're going to go ahead and switch this over to here. We're going to kind of animate here. We're going to go over to O. And while we're doing that, we're actually going to animate here. And then we're going to rotate our R's. We're going to have it rotate to about here. And then we're going to rotate our T. And have it rotate to here. So this motion should actually not be terrible. It's like see how that motion feels so much more like a realistic motion than what I had before. And that is because I'm doing small incremental animations based off of their parents, which makes it bend in a more realistic manner. So this, even though it's completely abstract, it's the word troll, you can kind of see this as a living creature that's bending along a skeleton and actually grabbing you in a realistic manner. As realistic as, literal characters can be. Okay. So from here, of course you were. Okay. Phew. So from here, that gets to our character getting swapped out. And once we do that, we need to fling the character back, which means that we are going to. So now we're going to go from here. Let's have it hold there for about 5 frames. It's not much, but it's enough for us to get what we want out of it. That's also hilarious that I ended up doing that. So we're going to do 1. Please tell me that you're not going to freak out. 30, we don't actually want you to change. 1, 1, 1, and then 0, 0, 0. Okay. Same thing here. We need to go 1, 1, 1, and we need to go 0, 0, 0. 44, 45. O needs to be 1, 5, 1. Okay. Here, 61 to 60. 1. The tedium of keyframe animation, let me tell you. But it does look so much better. All right, so we hold that for 5 frames, just so that it's like fairly obvious that the player has been caught, and then we're going to fling. So I'm going to say we probably, let's see, so 65 for at frame 65 is when we are holding that pose. Then we need to go from there. I'm going to, it's probably fine for it to be half a second. I'm working in half-second intervals when honestly I probably should work in larger ones. But basically, like I said at the beginning, I'm going to be just keyframing everything, and then I'm going to come back later and smooth out and space the keyframes so that everything feels better. So let's go ahead. And now I got to fling them. So we are going to, I'm also going to go ahead and get rid of, turn this off because I don't need you up there right now. We're going to go ahead and say, so I'm really hoping that doesn't like record that. Of course it recorded it. Well, I'll have to get rid of that. Which is fine. I have to go through here and clean up this animation clip anyway. So now we want to fling this. So we're going to have to rotate. Starting from our base, we want to start rotating. Oh, man. Do I want to do that? So naturally I would want to, but that's going to cause some problems when I do my movements. Oh, man, do I need to flip him again? So if you... So if you're throwing something and you move to throw it, what you do, let's say that you're standing and you're turning to your right slightly, reaching back to grab something, which is kind of what we're implying here. Although we're implying it by having him grab it with his face, but you know. What we need to do is we need to kind of whip around, which I guess actually it's fine that we're moving with our hips first. Okay. I was worried. I was thinking that I needed to reverse it and animate from the T again, but I think I need to animate from the L. So, all right. So from here, we're going to want to animate not our L2, but we are going to want to animate L1. Let's have this rotate to end up. That's straight. We actually want to overthrow, I think, to about here. And we're going to actually, hold on. We're gonna go back one more here. Well, nope. We're gonna over exaggerate actually. So we want to. Rotate this way. Oh, it's gonna be. Oh, nope, 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 and of course. I hate accidentally clicking the wrong thing and having to undo while animating. Okay, so we're gonna throw here, and then we need R to come up pretty solidly. It needs to make a pretty big turn here. Okay, and T has to come all the way up. It needs to just be completely restored, basically. Right about that. And maybe actually a little bit further and thrown that way. So this is what it's going to animate like. So we go from here to there. And we're going to throw probably about there. Right about there is where you'll get released. And then we're going to need to straighten up after that and put him back into his resting position. For now, though, I'm going to go ahead and stop animating the troll, and we're going to switch back over to the hero, who's been lying on their backs pretty dutifully so far. And this is where things are going to be awkward, actually, because I'm going to turn off preview, and we are going to come over here to stomp throw. I'm going to move O out of there, and then I'm going to move my point here to be about here-ish, pretty close to the O. I'm going to move the O to be back below there. Okay, so now our stomp throw is a little bit easier for us to animate. So now, if I scrub through here and we get to this point, you can see that we have our stomp throw there at 60. And now I can just grab the stomp throw and throw it instead of having to kind of throw the O, which I guess actually is what I should have done anyway, because that's what I did. Well, actually, no, I borked that. Um, let's turn this off real quick. So I'm actually going to do this the other way. I'm going to remove this again, set this to 0, put this back, and before I do anything else, what I'm going to do is I'm going to change the pivot here. Except I cannot do that with this setup. I need to set it to 0. Ooh, what just happened? Really? Turn off preview. I'm going to unlock this so that I don't have to deal with it too. Why exactly did you do that? I am baffled here. Okay. All right. So we don't want that. That is baffling to me. All right, I think what I want is this. Nope. You should not be doing that. This pivot shouldn't matter. And then if I set you, you should not move. But you do. Alright, fine. I guess I'll counter do it. No, that is correct now. Because you'll notice, yeah, okay. So that was my problem. Okay, you know what, here, let's just do this. So the R was correct, but the O was not. Okay, so let's put these in order now. Okay. So now, if we come back and scrub this, we're in the same spot, and now we need to start getting thrown. We need position and rotation. Oh, that's troll parent. We want hero position and rotation. These need to be kept in the same spot. So let's go ahead and start recording this. Let's lock this. Come up to here. So we need this to be changed. I really should update that so that it's not doing the cached animator stuff because that's bad. So we're going to set our, we're just going to pretty much redo this. Okay. Rotation, I'm not really too concerned about, but I will do it anyway. Okay. Uh-oh. Okay, well that's somewhat disturbing. I have a rotation value that's lerping, and it's the Z value for some reason. That's always disturbing. Okay, and from there, we need to start animating our actual stomp, or our O here. Okay, I think I'm going to finish up this throw, having the player get thrown, and then we're probably going to call it a night. Oh man, animations really do take forever. I was hoping we would get through one, and of course we've gotten through half of one. One that was already a quarter complete because of how ridiculously meticulous all of this is. Um, Anywho, we're gonna go ahead and set. We have to set all of our positions and all of our um, rotation values here. So we need to set you there, set you here. I do not know why you're like that, but we're just gonna set you at 3. Okay. And from here, oh, oh, that's the face stomp. Okay, that's something else. All right, all right. Okay. So we're gonna go ahead and. Oh man, I have to animate the individual characters of this too. Oh, oh man, that is rough. All right. Um, for now, I'm gonna probably just animate the O and have everything be a little static, and we'll add some animation bending to them later. So from here, we basically want to follow along with that T. It would probably actually be the most. It would probably be easiest to just parent the hero to the T value and have the T just like literally whip them around. But they're technically 2 separate objects, so we'll animate this by hand. Okay, so that's this. Same thing. We gotta keep these here for 5 frames. 4, 5, 2, 3. Okay, and then from here, we are going to actually animate the throw. So up to 95. Things are going to get really weird here. So right about, so basically at this point, we want to be, thinking about how I want to do this. We're going to be facing this way, roughly. Like this is about where, hold on. Nope, I lied. We should probably be about here-ish. By the time I'm being thrown, probably I want to be kind of like this. Which of course has no easy way for me to move up. Right about here, I'm going to say. Which of course, when I animate, is going to be all kinds of stupid. Like, yeah, it's going to clip directly through him. Which is terrible because that basically means I need to animate my anchor position X, I believe. Because I need it to move so much farther right than it actually does. So I really need it to do like that. Except in reverse, apparently. Stop it. I hate trying to animate these curves. In timeline, it's just so incredibly frustrating to try and handle keyframes because it's very easy for you to click and like try to drag like this, and for some reason it has another keyframe selected, so when you drag it just moves the keyframe around. It's like, no, don't do that. That ruins all the positioning. So this is where this is. I need to go into X. F over here. It's very hard for you to see because I'm not doing anything that you can see. So I was animating it this way. I actually need to animate it the other way, in the sense that, oh dear, let's go ahead and say left tangent is constant and right tangent is going to do this because I need this to animate the other direction, which is obviously not going to work very well. Really? There we go. Let's see. It really is. It's super delicate. In fact, it's so delicate that there have been times where I've clicked and dragged to try and like select some keyframes, and clicking way down here still moves the keyframes that you've already clicked on, even though you've clicked on nothing over here. It's really infuriating. And then when you hit back, it freaks out for a little bit. It does seem like undo actually does work, but it weirdly stutters and things kind of jump around, so you're not sure how much was undone by that one undo. It's very vexing. Um, so this is moving too far right, which means that I actually need to do this. Man, you are way too annoying. So you can see here that my hero is really trying to stick close to that center point. Um, Probably that's because I need to. That's a really good endpoint, I think. Like that's about where I want him to be. I just need him to go farther right, like really far right. You're not going far enough right. There. Like we really have to go far right to throw him properly. So you can see that we're going. It's going too fast though, which sucks. Okay, so we are going. I don't like that he moves ahead of the troll. He's supposed to move after him, which makes this very difficult. Because if I don't have it cranked, he just doesn't go over there. So I need to. Okay, so we're going too fast. Gotta move him over. Well, maybe I should just embrace this. You know, like have a really cartoonish throw. Like that. Alright, let's go ahead and stop playing. VCAM segment 2. Let's see here. VCAM segment 2. Left a failure, which it is trying to transition to for the most part, except I don't actually want it to do that yet. So we're going to have this stick there for a bit. Then we'll have this fling. I guess actually we'll have it go to here-ish. We'll have it fling, and I'm going to shorten this by about 1 second. Yes. Maybe I'll make this 1.25. So by the time we get to here, we basically want this to be have this be rotated. Oh no, don't do that. It's kind of like that. It's a little sudden. Let's move this to 45. So stomp, turn, grab, throw. But I would like that to be done. Okay, so let's move this up. We're gonna make this 1.5. Okay. So we stomp, kicked up, grab, and then we throw. Is he animating before the hold? No, it's just because it's moving counter. So throw. Okay. So freeze frame. Start playing that classic 80s movie music. All right. So that's pretty decent looking. Basically, the next steps that I'll take are I need to actually animate the hero being flung and smacking into the wall, flattening out. Probably I will add a particle effect that's like, ouch. And then the obviously we'll have dust particles. The player will then fall straight into the water, splash particles. And then after the troll resets position, the player will like bump up here, and the camera will need to eventually reset back to its default position, but I'm not entirely sure how I want to have it move from here. I don't know if I want to have it fly over with the hero, like as the hero is traveling down the hall, the camera is following them, or if I should have it simply wait until the player falls into the water and jumps back up through the grating to reset their position. Um, both kind of work. I'll have to think about it. I think that's a pretty good place to stop for the night. Obviously, since this is animation work, I am going to be doing this for a very, 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 very long time. But everything is coming together on this animation. I have, I think, 5 animations left to do for this combat sequence. Part of what makes this so challenging is that I have to have animations for when you fail and when you succeed at every turn, which really puts a burden of animation on me. And I knew that when I designed the system, that was going to be the case, that I would have a lot more animation work to do. But the trade-off for that is that it is much more entertaining to watch, in my opinion. The current combat system, if you played the demo, is already functional, but it doesn't scale well, and it gets kind of boring in my opinion after a while. So this new system, even though it's a lot more animation work for me, should look and feel better, and it will be more entertaining over the long run than the old system would be. So, okay. Announcements, real quick. So next weekend is PopCon, not this coming weekend, but the weekend after that. That's going to be Indie PopCon. That means I will not be doing my dev stream on Saturday. I will also not be doing my dev stream on Thursday because of next week, because that is load-in day. So I'll be loading everything into the convention center. I will, of course, be tweeting about all this or about PopCon as it's happening, but just giving everyone a heads up that next Thursday and next Saturday I will not be doing my dev stream. So that's pretty much the only announcements that I had for today. All right, so yeah, I think that's a pretty good place to stop for the night. So as always, I want to thank you all very much for watching, and I will see you all next time.